So the disappearance of Sarah Everard while walking home in London last week has sparked an outpouring from women voicing their anger and frustration over the challenges they face in order to stay safe in public spaces.
According to a survey carried out by UN Women UK and YouGov, 97% of women aged 18 to 24 say they have been sexually harassed, while 80% of women of all ages said they'd experienced sexual harassment in public places.
So what needs to change in order to make the streets and other public spaces safer for women? When we're joined now by actor J Perry, whose tweet asking women for advice on what men can do to help went viral, along with the leader of the Women's Equality Party, Reid, an organiser of the Liverpool vigil Reclaim These Streets by Isabel Burke. Good morning to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Isabel, if we can start with you, those figures that Kate just read out are truly shocking from my perspective to hear those things. 97% of women aged 18 to 24 say they have been sexually harassed. 80% of women of all ages said they had experienced sexual harassment in public spaces. It was an interesting tweet from Jay that created this outpouring of response in terms of trying to understand what men can do to make things better. Listening is the first thing, of course. But what's your experience and how do you feel about what's been happening over the last few days?
I mean, I wish I could say the same, that they were shocking figures. They're not, unfortunately, to the majority of women. The last few days have just once again brought it home that there is just so much to still be done for women around the world. You know, for me, the first time I can remember being followed, I was 12 or 13, walking to a bus stop, and an adult man pulled his car over and proceeded to drive extremely slowly behind me on a completely quiet road. And from then, it's only gotten worse. And that is an experience that I know all of my friends have. My family are the exact same. I don't know one woman who hasn't had an experience of any sort of form of assault, being followed, harassed. It's not surprising, and it's time for a societal change. It's time for us to shift the blame off women and what we can do to stay safe, and it's just time to start educating men better.
Well, somebody who has come forward, actor J Perry, whose tweet asking women for advice on what men can do to help, went absolutely viral. And I think the response has been great, although I think you had to ask your mum whether you should say more about it. But the response of you coming forward and asking has been great. What prompted you?
Yeah, on asking my mum briefly, I didn't want to take up any more space, to be honest. Men take up a lot of space, and I didn't want to be that person. So I wanted to ask her if she thought this would be the right thing for me to do. And I think what I learned from this tweet going viral and from asking this advice to women, and they were so kind and generous to give me so much advice and also share their stories, is that men do need to be doing more. I think I've always had this theory, I'm a nice guy, I treat women with respect. It's not enough at this stage. It's not enough to be a nice guy. We have to be actively dismantling these systems of oppression that we've put in place, you know, that men have put in place. And so I need to be...
Sorry, I thought you'd finish.
No,
what's the best bit of advice that you've been given, prompted by your tweet, for you to do as an individual? Because obviously there needs to be a big, as you said, dismantling of the system, some would argue. But as an individual, have you had something where you thought, I'd never thought of that, I'll do that from now on?
I think physically, creating distance and spaces always was a running theme that women were talking about. I think that's something I did before. I'd cross the road a lot of the time when I'm in the street with a lone woman. But picking up the phone and calling a loved one, calling your mum or a partner or something can kind of break that awkward silence in their moments and alleviate so much anxiety.
Right, so saying hi, mum, would make the person standing next to you think, oh, OK, you know, and relax it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's just a really easy thing that you can do as a guy to just break that silence. And also, it shows that you're way more interested in your phone call than you are in the person in front of you.
Mando, I'm not sure if you heard a moment ago, Kate was talking about her 15-year-old Darcy and talking about trying to sort of the clothes that she was wearing. And Darcy was saying, Why should I have to change my clothes because of how someone else is going to react? And I had a tweet from Michelle on the back of this saying, when something happened to me when I was a young child, aged 8 to 11, the first thing the police asked me was, what was I wearing?
Wow.
As if it was what I was wearing had encouraged this person to react that way. How have we got to this point, Mandy, where actually it's not about protecting the victim, and we've got to the point where it is so normal, as Isabel was saying, for women to be harassed in this way?
I mean, this is just a cause and consequence of the fact that men and women are unequal in our society. We have unequal status, we wield unequal power. And so this is just a natural consequence of that. But I think the way I see it is that women have been living with this for as long as we can remember. We've put up with it for as long as we can remember. And now, women like, Kate's daughter, Darcy, what they're saying is enough is enough. And that is absolutely the right call. I think we need to treat this issue, violence against women and girls, as a political and policing priority. We've talked about what actions individuals can take, but you know what? Individuals can also take action that affect the political change we need to see. Because actually, if politicians are expected of voters to take this issue seriously, we've got a whole run of elections coming up in May for police and crime commissioners. There's 40 across the country. If men and women stand up and say, we expect ending violence against women and girls to be a political priority, that will force the issue and start to create the conditions for the cultural change. It'll start to create the conditions for attitudes to shift. So we actually look at the perpetrators and stop putting responsibility onto the victims and create systems that actually address these problems when they emerge, which will gradually result in women and girls starting to feel safer. My niece, who's 8 years old, has a chance of growing up in a world where she doesn't have to deal with the same stuff I've had to deal with, Isabel's had to deal with, Kate's had to deal with, Kate's daughter's had to deal with.
Just before we let you go, Isabel, what advice would you give men watching today, young lads, teenagers watching today, in terms of trying to improve this situation?
I think the key here is to just be an active ally. If a female friend comes to you and says they have been assaulted or they're not happy with another male's behaviour, don't question them. Don't accuse them of causing a fuss. Believe them. And if you can do anything to help, do it there and then. Don't wait. Don't go home. Don't think about it. Just do it there and then.
Yeah, well, it would be wonderful if, this began the start of real change, wouldn't it? Albeit on the back of unspeakable tragedy, but it would be wonderful if it began. Thank you so much to all three of you this morning. Been good to talk.
Thank you.
Now, if you or someone you know has been affected by any of the issues raised, there are details of organisations that offer advice and support at itv.com/GMB.